The date is January 3rd, 1987, and the venue is the legendary Boston Garden, a cathedral of sport whose hallowed walls few arenas could rival. But tonight, it's not basketball or hockey that holds the crowd in its grip. It's a different kind of legend and a different kind of history. The air crackles with an almost impossible energy, a collision of two eras, two ideologies, two forces of nature. The crowd, a beautiful mosaic of the past and the present, roars. On one side stands Bruno Sammartino, a man who is the very embodiment of wrestling's rich history, a figure carved from marble and grit. On the other is Macho Man Randy Savage, a supernova of swagger and spectacle, a man who lives in the now and screams for the future. This shouldn't be a fair fight. Bruno is 51 years old, the ravages of a career built on a brutal, almost masochistic commitment to his craft are etched on his face, and in the slow, deliberate way he moves. He's a fortress, but one with cracks in its foundation. Savage, meanwhile, is in his prime, a whirlwind of energy, a coiled spring of pure, unadulterated athletic aggression. He zips around the ring, a blur of bright yellow, while Bruno stands his ground, a stoic oak refusing to bend in the wind. Savage, frustrated by the unyielding strength of the old legend, resorts to the tactics that define his era. He drags Bruno out of the ring and eventually grabs a metal chair, a weapon that represents everything Bruno despises about the modern sport. The referee tries to intervene, but Savage is too quick, too wild. He swings the chair like a sledgehammer and sends it crashing into the back of Bruno. The sound is a sickening clang that echoes through the garden. Bruno, the man who withstood years of the most punishing beatdowns imaginable, crumples to the ground. Savage, with wicked satisfaction, slides back in at the last second and celebrates as the referee calls for the bell. He wins. But the crowd's roar isn't for him. It's a howl of betrayal and defiance. Savage stands tall, basking in his ill-gotten victory. He raises his arms, a king in his castle of chaos. But from behind, an enraged bull charges. It's Bruno, his face a mask of pure, untamed fury. He clobbers Savage from behind and then delivers a flurry of fists and boots, a whirlwind of retribution. Savage stumbles, falls, and Bruno is on him, an animalistic rage consuming him. Other wrestlers from both the old and new guards rush to the ring. They have to pry Bruno off Savage, his hands refusing to let go, his eyes burning with a fire that hadn't been extinguished by a chair shot or the passage of time. He needed to make it clear, his era wasn't over. He was a force of nature, and no one, not even a man named Savage, could tame him. But as Bruno was dragged away, another force was already at work, a man who saw this clash not as a moment of history, but as an obstacle to his future. That man was Vince McMahon. He had a different vision, a different way of doing business, a different kind of history he wanted to write. And in his world, Bruno Sammartino, the man who defined an era, the man who was a living testament to a sport's integrity, was a liability. He was a ghost from a past Vince wanted to bury, a legend he tried to erase. But to understand why a titan would try to bury another, you have to go back to the beginning. Before he was a legend, before he was a hero to millions, he was just a small boy from a small town in Italy. He was born in Pizzoferrato, a village nestled in the Abruzzi Mountains, a place of stunning beauty and brutal hardship. During World War II, the village was occupied by Nazi Germany. Bruno and his family, including his mother, Emilia, had to hide in the mountains for months, surviving on whatever they could scrounge. The ordeal left him sickly and frail, a far cry from the man he would become. When the war ended, the family emigrated to Pittsburgh, a city that was a crucible for immigrants and a perfect home for a tough kid with a dream. He was still small and sickly, a target for bullies. But something shifted. He started working out, a slow, agonizing process of self-improvement. He found an old weight set and began to lift, building a body that would one day be hailed as the pinnacle of human strength. The sickly child was gone, replaced by a man of steel. It was in Pittsburgh that he discovered professional wrestling, a sport that spoke to his heritage and his newfound strength. He was a natural, a powerhouse who combined incredible strength with a grappling style that was both brutal and beautiful to watch. His ethnic pride resonated with the Italian immigrant communities that packed arenas across the country. They saw a champion, an emblem of their struggle and their triumph. Then, on May 17, 1963, at Madison Square Garden, the wrestling world changed forever. Bruno stepped into the ring to challenge Buddy Rogers for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Championship. It wasn't a long, drawn-out battle. It was a statement. In just 48 seconds, Bruno Sammartino defeated Rogers, capturing the title and the heart of a generation. What followed was a reign of unprecedented dominance. He would hold the championship for an incredible 7 years and 8 months. During that time, he became more than just a wrestler. He was an institution. He sold out Madison Square Garden an almost unbelievable 187 times. When he finally dropped the belt in 1971, the world thought his time was over. But he was too big, too much of a draw. He returned a few years later and captured the title a second time, holding it for another 3 years and 4 months. For a total of over 11 years, Bruno wasn't just a champion. He was the face of professional wrestling. He was a hero to the common man, a symbol of hard work, honesty, and integrity. His relationship with Vince McMahon Sr., the founder of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, was built on a foundation of trust and respect. It was a business built on Bruno's back, a partnership that brought both men immense success. But the toll on his body was significant. He suffered a broken neck in 1976 and a list of other injuries that would have crippled a lesser man. By the late 70s, he transitioned into semi-retirement, still a hero, but no longer the all-consuming champion. The sport was changing, and he wasn't sure he liked what he was seeing. And then, in 1982, the son took over. Vince McMahon Jr., a man with a singular vision and a massive ego, had a plan to take professional wrestling national. He had a different kind of hero in mind, a cartoonish, larger-than-life character who screamed for a different kind of audience. As the Hulkamania era dawned, Bruno saw the writing on the wall. He saw the sport he loved becoming something he didn't recognize. The focus was no longer on strength, grappling, and pure athletic ability. It was on muscle-bound men, flashy entrances, and showmanship. It was an entertainment product first, a sport second. And then came the final straw, the revelation that severed his ties to the company. He discovered that he had been cheated by Vince Sr., his trusted partner, on the promised gate percentages for his entire second title run. He filed a lawsuit against the company, and the legal battle was eventually settled out of court by Vince Jr. after his father had passed. The settlement included a clause for his return as a commentator, a peace offering of sorts. But the damage was done. For Bruno, the business he had held in such high esteem, the business built on handshakes and trust, was now a business of lies and deceit. The new World Wrestling Federation was everything Bruno wasn't: glitz, showmanship, and excess. It was a world he couldn't and wouldn't be a part of. And so he left. For decades, the name Bruno Sammartino was rarely uttered on Federation television. He was a ghost in the machine, a name that was conspicuously absent from the company's official history. And the reasons for this, while complex, boil down to a few key factors that all point back to Vince McMahon, the ruler who now held the keys to the kingdom. First, Bruno belonged to the old guard. He was a living reminder of Vince Sr.'s era, a period that Vince Jr. wanted to minimize in order to build his own. To truly establish Hulk Hogan as the icon of professional wrestling, Vince needed to erase the memory of the man who had held the top spot for over a decade. How could you sell the new boom if the old legend stood as a monument to what came before? Bruno was the walking, talking embodiment of the past, and Vince wanted the future, a future he created. Second, Bruno refused to play along, and he was outspoken about what he saw as the corruption of the sport. He saw the widespread use of steroids, the sleazy, vulgar storylines, and the increasingly cartoonish nature of the characters. In interviews on shows like Phil Donahue and Geraldo, Bruno desecrated the product, calling it dishonest and corrupt compared to his era. This was the ultimate sin in Vince McMahon's world. Vince demanded loyalty, and Bruno's loyalty was to his perceived view of the sport, not the company. He wouldn't toe the company line, and this turned him from a legend into an enemy in Vince's eyes. Finally, it came down to control and ego. Vince couldn't control Bruno's legacy. He hadn't created him, he hadn't molded him, and he couldn't dictate how he was perceived by the fans. Bruno was beholden to no one. He didn't need the company's approval or recognition. For Vince, the worst sin was independence, a direct challenge to his authority. Bruno embodied this independence, a constant reminder that Vince's world was built on another man's shoulders. For decades, the silence was deafening. Bruno continued with his outspoken criticism and refused every overture and every attempt at reconciliation. He rejected offers to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. He wouldn't be associated with a company that he felt had strayed so far from its roots. But time, and perhaps a softening of both men's stubbornness, worked its magic. In 2013, the unthinkable happened. After a personal phone call from Triple H, Bruno accepted the invitation. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame at Madison Square Garden, the very building he had built with his bare hands. The crowd, a mix of old fans and young, gave him a hero's welcome. It was an emotional moment, a long overdue reconciliation for a man who deserved to be celebrated, not erased. Vince McMahon tried to rewrite history, but Bruno Sammartino's legacy proved unshakable. He was, and remains, the champion Vince McMahon could never erase. His story is a testament to the power of a hero who stands for something more than just a company, a man who, even in his final years, could not be tamed. His was a legacy that was built not on corporate branding, but on the raw, unyielding power of a man who refused to be forgotten. May he rest in peace,